Hey guys, this video is going to be about the differences that you can come across in a paper-based and a computer-based test, along with a few pros and cons. So let's get started with this lesson. Okay, so there are many parameters that these two formats differ on, and also they differ with respect to different sections as well of the IELTS test. But before that, I want to talk about the common parameters that most students look for before even attempting or taking and scheduling the computer-based test. Right. So the first parameter that I have in my mind is the ambiance of the center, which is probably the most important factor for you to consider which test you want to take. But here the computer-based test takes a little higher rank than the paper-based test because the crowd is much limited owing to the many number of slots that are available throughout the day compared to what it is in a paper-based test. So if you want some calm environment or a lesser crowd and you consider that as an important factor, then you should probably be considering computer-based. And if crowd isn't a factor of distraction for you, then you can just go ahead and take a paper-based test. The next thing that I have in mind is the time that the results takes to reach you. Now, results take about 2 weeks or sometimes even more if you have written a paper-based test, whereas in a computer-based test, the result can reach you even within a week, even say 5 days sometimes. So that's an advantage if you want quicker results, if you have tougher targets with respect to time, then I believe computer-based is the choice for you. But if you don't have the pressure of time, then you can consider a paper-based test as an option. The next thing that's a difference is the timer. Now, the timer is available to you at the exam center in the exam room. It's a common timer that you can access and look at it whenever you want to. But if you're writing a computer-based test, the timer is available on your computer screen and it flashes red at 10 minutes and 5 minutes from the end of the test time. And this timer runs differently for each section. So for a listening test, your timer will be for 32 minutes, which is 30 minutes plus 2 minutes of time to check your answers. For reading and writing, it is again 60 minutes in total. The timer will flash red at the end of 50th and 55 minutes if your time is for 1 hour. If the exam time or the test time is for 1 hour for a particular section, it will flash red from 10 minutes before the end of exam and 5 minutes before the exam. Alright, and that's about the timer. The next thing is the instructions. The instructions are pretty much the same for both the test formats. The instructions are available at the beginning of each section in a question paper if you are writing a paper-based, and the instructions will flash on the screen before each section starts, and you will have to make sure you read them very, very clearly, even if you're writing a paper-based or a computer-based. It's not a pro, it's not a con here for both these formats. It's just that the instructions are available in a different way. That's it. Now, another thing about computer-based tests that's probably beneficial for most of you is the noise cancelling headphones. Now, the headphones that are given to you in the listening test are common. So you will have a headphone for a paper-based test as well. But in a computer-based test, for the reading and the writing sections, if you feel that you're getting disturbed by the typing sounds by the various candidates, then you can take and borrow a noise cancelling headphones as well to prevent you from this disturbance. And this is an advantage considering that you're writing a computer-based test. The next thing that's probably beneficial again in a computer-based test is that you can change answers anytime you want to, and those answers will not look untidy or illegible. Whereas if you're making change to your answers, already written answers in a paper-based test, you will have to strike that out if you've written it with a pen. But if you're writing it with a pencil, you can change your answers anyway. But it's obviously more tidy, more legible, more clear in a computer-based test. You don't have to worry about your handwriting. However, writing down answers is a problem if you are someone who is typing slowly. So if you're not a very fast typist, then I believe that you should just take a paper-based test. If you're struggling with the keyboard, struggling with navigation of the keyboard, just take the paper-based test. But if you're someone who believes that your typing speed is very fast and your handwriting is not aiding you getting a good score, then I believe you should go ahead and take a computer-based test. Okay, so that's about writing down and changing the answers. Another thing that I want to talk about here is the evaluation. Now, evaluation parameters, the methods of evaluation are all the same for both these formats. Only thing that's different is the interface. That's all is different. The evaluation process, the parameters, everything is same. And the order of the test is same again. The first section will be listening, followed by reading, and the last one is writing. Now you can do your rough work in both the paper-based test and a computer-based test. In a computer-based test, you will be given a paper and pencil, but although you can note down points and all that, you will have to be quick with typing the answer. So that's your aim there. You will have to type your answers while also doing rough work maybe. So it requires a lot of multitasking. But in a paper-based test, you can do all the rough work in the space that's given to you in the question paper, and even if you can write your answers or your rough answers maybe the next to the question that's available in a question paper. Whereas in a computer-based test, you will have to do on a separate sheet of paper and the questions arrive on your screens. So that's one difference and probably one con or one disadvantage considering the computer-based test. Take a look at now the sectional wise differences in a paper-based and the computer-based test. The speaking test is not computerized at all, which means that you will still be talking to the examiner face to face, and only thing that's different, the components that are different are listening, reading and writing. So let's talk about the listening test first. The timing is a little different in a computer-based test. While in a paper-based, you have 40 minutes, that is 30 minutes of the recording plus the last 10 minutes to transfer your answers from the question paper to the answer sheet. You don't have 10 minutes, you just have 2 minutes to check your entire lot of answers that you have typed as you had listened to the recording. Okay, so that's a little different. So you need to be very careful, extra careful about typing out an answer in a listening test. Now, the next thing that's different in a listening test is that in multiple choice questions, you may either be ticking the right box in a computer-based test, or sometimes if you have list selection questions or matching features, you will be dragging the right answer to its blank, to its corresponding blank, rather than typing it down or ticking the box. Whereas in a paper-based test, you will just be writing the answer down depending on the instructions that are given. Okay, so I'm going to just repeat this point again. In multiple choice, sometimes you will have to tick the box in a computer-based test, whereas you will have to just choose the right answer A, B or C in a paper-based test. If it's list selection, that is, if you're choosing 2 or 3 options among 8 or 9 options, you will be dragging those 2 or 3 options to their corresponding blanks in a computer-based test, whereas in a paper-based test, you will be writing them down manually. That's another difference. So what you need to do here is that you need to be comfortable with the interface of a computer-based test. Now that's all about the listening test, except for the timing and the interface of choosing the right answer. Everything else looks the same in a listening test for paper-based and computer-based formats. Coming to the writing section, you have a little more comfort with respect to a computer-based test than a paper-based. Let's take a look at the first comfort that you have. One is certainly the word count. You don't have to count the words manually if you're writing a CBT. Your word count is displayed on the screen, and as and when you delete or add words, your word count keeps changing. In a PBT, you don't have that option. You will have to do the count manually. Now, changing answers in writing is something that most of us find difficult or challenging. If you have written an idea and if you want to change it, it's going to be challenging if you have written a PBT. Whereas if you write a CBT, changing answers is much simpler. You'll just have to delete and change your answers. Your answer look the same. They don't look untidy at all. And you don't have to also worry about your handwriting here. if you have an issue with your handwriting, and if you feel that your handwriting is not really sufficiently good, you can probably attempt a computer-based test. So that is why it's a benefit, especially considering the writing section. Now, another thing that's the same probably in PBT and CBT is the timer. So 1 hour is cumulatively counted for task 1 and task 2. There is no individual timer for task 1 and task 2 in both the tests. So even if you're writing PBT or CBT, 20 minutes you should allot for task 1. Nobody is going to force you to allot 20 minutes. All you have to do is that you'll have to complete task 1 and task 2 within the hour. That's probably the same. And spell checks are not available in CBT. You don't have the comfort there. In a PBT, you will have to do it manually, and the same goes with CBT. So not really an advantage with respect to spell checks there. Another advantage considering the writing section is that you have the option of cut, copy, paste. If you have written something in the introduction and you want to use the same word, or if you feel like using the same idea, you can do that and cut, copy, paste in the conclusion as well. Whereas in a PBT, you will obviously have to write it down manually. So that's an added advantage if you're writing a CBT, especially in a writing test. Let's move forward to the reading section now. Looking at the reading section, there are a bunch of differences between the PBT and the CBT. The timing, however, is the same. You will be attempting 40 questions in 60 minutes, and that holds good if you're writing academic or even the general training. So there's no difference there, it's the same. Now, highlighting text is something that's possible in a CBT, and you can do that in a PBT as well with a different ink or a pen or a pencil, anything that you have carried. And in a CBT, you can just use a right click and highlight option if you want to highlight a certain portion of the passage. Now, searching text is not possible. You can't do Control F. You will have to only search manually in a CBT. And obviously in a PBT, you can't do Control F. You will have to search manually. So these 3 parameters are the same. Now take a look at the next parameter, which is copy paste. Now if you want to copy paste some information or a couple of words from the passage, you can do that if you want to in a CBT, whereas you can't do that in a PBT. And why is this advantageous in a CBT is because you can avoid typo errors, you can avoid typing errors, spelling errors, and all of that. In a PBT, you will have to do the spell check manually. Now, coming to the next point, which is navigation to the passage. If you want to go through the passage for something and come back to your question, you will have to do that manually in both the cases. Only thing, you will be doing it differently. In a PBT, you'll just be turning pages back and forth, and in a CBT, you will be scrolling up and down and looking at your passage on the left and questions on the right. So that's about navigation to questions as well. Now, another advantage, or considering that you're writing a computer-based test, you can also increase the font size if you want to. You have an option to do that in a reading test, and that's not applicable or not possible practically in a paper-based test. Okay, so these are the difference with respect to the reading test. The differences and similarities, and I also told you about pros and cons of each and every point with respect to a PBT and a CBT. So weigh these options and then choose what you want to do. Now, many students ask me which one is actually better. Well, there's no such answer. If you're comfortable with the interface of the questions, go ahead and take a CBT. But if you're not comfortable and you've been practicing on a paper pen so far, then don't go take CBT. That's as simple as that, guys. But if you feel that you have the pressure of time and you need your results faster, in that case, CBT is advisable for you. But before that, go check the IDP website. They have one sample of how a computer-based test looks like, and you can practice on that and understand how all these questions appear in front of you. Okay, and also another information that I want to convey is that CBT is available in both IDP and British Council tests, and they are available at various centers in India. I'm going to be giving that information as well. Take a look at the bottom of your screens. So this is all about PBT and CBT. I hope this video helped you. We'll see you again in the next video lesson.